And welcome back to the Midday Show. I am Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. I am excited for today because we haven't had a chance to really dive into like different topics. I want to talk to you about the Ohio PA train disaster in East Palestine. I have numbers, I have stats. Really,
Wait, hold on. Before it's in Palestine?
East Palestine, Ohio.
I did not know that it was
Palestine?
called. Well, Palestine is the
Correct,
Jerusalem. Yeah. It's the historic place in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, that has nothing to do with anything.
Columbia County, Ohio. There's another one for you too. Asbury Revival, John Fetterman. You brought up the Fox stuff with Twitter, the reports. I want to argue with you about the NBA All-Star game. Lots and lots of stuff that I'm excited to dive into. Mark, how are you feeling today?
I hadn't really thought about it till now.
Now that you've had a chance to think about it, Mark, how are you feeling today?
Okay, since I last spoke, all I've been thinking about is, can we have him do a new ditty that says almost Emmy nominated or soon to be Emmy nominated?
We'll reach out to him.
The soon to be Emmy nominated.
We should have him come back on, and we'll get him to do a little ditty because Rock Off, that's about a year ago, so we could probably get Dylan to come back on again.
Yeah.
He
do you know on 2.5 Men, that's what Charlie Sheen did.
Oh, he wrote jingles.
He wrote jingles.
Yeah.
He was a jingle writer.
Yeah. I was
did you know that's how Barry Manilow got started?
Writing jingles.
I saw him on a talk, it might have been Oprah, one of those. Okay. He did I think he did some really famous ones. Like I think he did I Get Stuck on Band-Aid because the Band-Aid stuck on me. Okay. And Oprah's like, really? What? She's like, what? I think he did Like a Good Neighbor. State Farm Is There. He put the music to it. Okay. And there were some really ones like, she's like, you did that? He's like, yeah. They're like, how much? He goes, yeah, it's one day. It's like $500. Yeah. And she's like, you wrote that jingle that is timeless.
Right.
And you got $500. He goes, well, that's how the contract worked and whatever. And then I think he said Mandy was his first. Like once he had one hit, then the jingle writing was done. Sure. But she rattled, and I'm sure in the show prep, they knew this was coming.
Sure.
But it was really, really, I've never Googled it since, but I'll bet if you did, I think he might have had one for McDonald's or Coca-Cola, but he was doing like huge ones.
I would imagine jingle writing is it's kind of like commercials for actors. Like, you know how a lot of actors started there in some Pizza Hut commercial. And then I would imagine jingle writing is the same way. I just recently finished Tick, Tick, Boom, which is the movie on Netflix about the guy who wrote Rent and passed away before he ever actually got to see it.
The guy who wrote Rent died before?
According to the movie, the guy who wrote Rent, he passed away before the actual opening night of Rent. Like he actually never got to see.
That's unbelievable.
Yes. But anyway, the reason I say that is because he worked 8 years on his first musical. And after he did like a presentation of it, he wasn't hearing from anybody and he panicked. And so he went to his one buddy because his buddy worked at a marketing agency and for years tried to get him to come in and write jingles for them. And so his buddy kind of gave him no, you're better than this. Like you're not meant for it. And wouldn't let him. And he went on to write Tick, Tick, Boom. And then he went on to write Rent before he passed away. So I thought of that because you said jingles and I literally just finished it yesterday.
Interesting.
So, yeah,
very interesting. All right. Train disasters in Palestine.
I wanted to talk to you about the train disaster. I asked you what you knew about it just for kind of like a foreground because I have a lot of information here that I'm excited to share because.
And you wanted to rub it in that I knew nothing.
No, the opposite. You should know nothing, and you know why?
Because no one's talking.
Because the national news media is not talking about this nearly enough or as much as they should be. So for those who don't know, if you've been living under a rock, there was a train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. It's practically Pennsylvania.
Right. I mean, right on the border.
It is right on the border. Actually, when they were doing the initial evacuations, there were residents of Pennsylvania that were evacuated as well as residents of Ohio. That's how close this is to the state of Pennsylvania. For those who don't know, multiple train cars off of the rails. There was a chemical that started to spill out. In order to help alleviate it, they were afraid of an explosion. They decided that they were going to let it leak, essentially do a slow burn, light it on fire, let it in. Initially after this was proclaimed to be a great success by the governor of Ohio, There were a couple of people at the federal level that were claiming like, successful burn off, like everything all right. As time has proceeded on, it feels like a cover-up. It feels like the national news media is not covering it. It feels like the state of Ohio isn't really covering it. The state of Pennsylvania isn't doing much about it. So I'm not sure where you want me to
start. Do you know why
off.
it feels that way?
Because they're not.
Because it is.
Because they're not. So let's start here. I was listening to a chemical engineer explain this. So initially when this story first came out, it was described as something that was used to make plastic, which it is. The chemical is used in all sorts of plastic creation. All right. You're gonna
lecture. I'm gonna get comfortable here.
Hold on. Let me. But you're gonna like this lecturing because it's super interesting.
Got it.
Okay. So this chemical by itself is unbelievably hazardous. Part of what is happening right now is when they did the slow burn off, and for anybody who's been in chemistry class before, when you burn it off, you create a hydro part of the element. So what this means is that it attaches itself to the first or any water molecule that it can find. So for us that are not big chemical people, like I don't really understand chemistry. I literally flunked chemistry. Essentially what is happening is as soon as you start to burn this stuff, it no longer is just floating off it is attaching to every single water molecule it can find, thus creating things such as acid rain. That's why you have issues with waterways, different things like that. So by burning it off, they are creating this fusion within the water molecules. And that's why there have been people all across the Northeast complaining about acid rain. They've complained about seeing spots on their car after rain. Like there's like a fluid, there's like a thick film rushing off. Obviously in rivers, all sorts of film. Like if you run like a stick through the stream, like it all rises up to the top, it bubbles. Really, really wild, freaky stuff going on. And that is why when they did this slow burn, they basically took it and turned it into a compound that now attaches itself to water. Really, really wild to think about. So the governor of Ohio sold this as a great success. And now in hindsight, obviously the explosion could have been worse. I'm not a scientist. I don't know. But this was not like the gun-ho success that they sold.
Are we going to... Is there anyone in the political world that is going to realize that just going out and telling everything it's wonderful is a bad idea?
I would hope so eventually. I think eventually we're going to get there.
You would have thought of the Trump COVID, like we'll all be back in church by Easter and it's not that bad and everyone should go out and live their life. And then it kept going. It's like, no, it's not over by Easter.
I've told you, I think it lost in the election.
COVID lost him the election.
I thought it lost in the election.
And the way, if he would have had it to do over again and come out and said, this looks really bad. We don't know what it is. You know, we've never had anything like this, but these are the things we're afraid of.
Right.
But just to come out and say it's not that bad in 2 weeks, it'll all be over.
Yes.
It really made him look incompetent because it was not nearly over in 2 weeks. And the same thing for this. The immediate reaction of politicians is to come out and say, nothing's that bad. Everything's okay. Nothing went bad on my watch and it's okay. And then, but in 2 weeks, when people find out it is a mess, now you look like a buffoon.
Yeah. In Ohio, the governor right now is getting dragged through the mud, no pun intended, because it has not been great. So there's three different elements here that I wanted to talk to you about. One is about the media and how they're covering it. Another one is the actual water bottling plant that's not very far away. This has been almost like not reported at all. And then let's start here. I told you, so the state of Ohio and the state of Pennsylvania, the train company offered to supply the test kits like as goodwill, like essentially like as part of the way that they were going to try to clean up, because right now they're not giving enough money to actually like help out.
Right.
I saw a report they were cutting $1,000 checks to residents that lived nearby. But like for $1,000, I mean, you can't get a hotel for 2 weeks for $1,000.
Right.
I mean, it's not sufficient. And that's just a short term. I mean, in the long run, it's not even close to being sufficient. So one of the things that they did is they offered for test kits so people could test their waters locally affected by the burn off. The test kits had a form that you had to sign before you were allowed to actually receive the test kit for them to come in and actually do the process. There were 2 residents in East Palestine, Ohio, that actually read through the forms that they had to sign. And at the end of it, and I actually have it up here because I want to make sure I say this right. You actually said it correctly earlier. Do you remember what you said?
Hold harmless.
Yes, they were hold harmless. So there was an NDA, there was non-disclosure, and there was a hold harmless at the end that you signed that would essentially make sure that Norfolk Southern Transportation was not going to be held responsible for any damage done to their property or their livelihood, which is unbelievable. Norfolk Southern has come out and said that they had the wrong forms.
Sure they did.
They did. So here's what's crazy is they're not even denying that it happened. They're basically saying like, oh yeah, like the forms that these residents are claiming that they were being forced to sign, they are correct. Like they're the wrong form, but they existed. And we actually had people show up to their doors and ask them to sign it before they could get their water tested.
Right.
It is unbelievable. I said to you, I have only found 2 publications of this, and I have not seen one national outlet cover this story. Not one.
That's why we are soon to be Emmy nominated.
That is why we are soon to be Emmy nominated. There's a water bottling company in Columbia County, Ohio, that had not stopped bottling the water as of this past weekend. They were shipments received all over the East Coast from Columbia County, Ohio, this weekend from a bottled water company that is 13 miles away from the train derailment. So if you are somebody who owns, if you buy bottled water, whatever else, I wouldn't tell you not to. I would just tell you to peek on the label. And if it says Columbia County, Ohio,
beware.
I would strongly suggest maybe looking for a different brand or a different
see if it's bubbling.
And it's all different brands because these watering, they bottle it and then companies buy it and they just slap their label on it. Right. So it's not like you can say like, don't buy this water.
Right.
It's going to be all different sorts of brands. And they already found they're across New York. It was New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and there was somewhere else that received shipments of water from Columbia County, Ohio, as of this weekend.
Nice.
It's absolutely crazy. So here's where you get into the media stuff and the politics of it. And this stuff I find absolutely fascinating. So everyone was talking about the current administration. This actually goes all the way back to the Obama administration. The Obama administration actually exempted this chemical from the hazardous material list. So one of the most hazardous materials we have was taken off of the list and claimed that it did not have to follow the protocols that, like, I'm not a transportation expert,
right?
But they took this one off during the Obama administration.
Do we know why? Is there an explanation?
There is not an explanation. I mean, I would imagine it's because they were lobbied to do
so,
like any other politician. The Trump administration, there was legislation to have all of the brakes redone across America and put in. The current brakes on the Southern rail system is still from the 1800s. It's the same mechanism. It's the same style. So the Trump administration actually turned down legislation to like replace it all, to basically say you have to get this switched by a certain date. And then the Biden administration, which obviously Buttigieg's getting thrown under the train, no pun intended, for the lack of response. But the Biden administration, part of the rail strike that they tried to basically curb and said it couldn't happen, this was part of it. Worker safety, they were claiming that equipment was too old, the rails were too old, all of this stuff. So this was part of the rail strike. So you literally have, I don't care if you're red, blue,
so George
purple,
W.
gray,
is out there saying, I had nothing to do with it.
He might be.
He's like,
but it doesn't matter. Red, blue, purple, green, if you were a fan of Obama, if you were a fan of Trump, if you're a fan of, it does not matter. 3 straight administrations all failed. And I'm not saying listen, stuff happens.
Right.
Like, I'm not saying that trains aren't going to derail and stuff like that, but 3 different administrations all played a hand into why we're in the situation we are in. I have one last one for you. Ready? You're letting me lecture today.
I'm ready. You go. You are rolling.
You and I talk a lot about national media, and we talk about what they cover and kind of just the agendas and all of that. So as of 10 days after this train wreck, after this explosion, CNN has done over an hour of coverage. Fox News has over 50 minutes of coverage. MSNBC did 36 minutes of coverage. These news outlets are 24/7. This was 10 days into it. That's 14,000 minutes for every single national news outlet. If you do the math and you add it up, in 10 days, they spent 0.0004% of coverage on this national story.
It goes along with the national story of the trial of, what was her name, Giselle? What's his name?
Ghislaine Maxwell and
Yes.
Epstein. Yes.
And what was the other story you talked about before we went on the other thing?
Pineapple Express.
The Pineapple Express
in Afghanistan. Yes.
Yes. There are. It is. The more we do this.
Yeah.
And really, the more I'm around you, because you're the one that points these stories out.
Mm-hmm.
Are the ones, and I know with the Maxwell chick, you kind of called it beforehand. Like this, no one's going to talk about it.
Nobody.
And it is shocking. And maybe I shouldn't, because at 51 years old, maybe I shouldn't be shocked. But until it has been presented to me like this, the stories that they hush and the stories that they bang the drum for, is.
We just talked about a balloon. Like there was live streams of a balloon floating through the air.
Right.
I mean, we talked about Elon Musk for 2 months straight, like he was causing the end of the world.
Well, you know why?
And go ahead.
Because every good story needs a villain.
Sure.
So Elon Musk became a villain.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting because he was like that character who turned. He had been heroic and he'd been this wonderful guy, and then he became a villain. And the balloon, the Chinese, of course, they're the villains. In the one in the train derailment, there are villains, but they're all us, and they're important. They're important people of us.
Sure.
So we don't want to be our own villain. We can make Musk be a villain. We can make the Chinese be a villain. We can't make a governor be a villain. We can't make that's not good.
Sure.
So it is interesting.
Really, really interesting. So we'll see where it goes. Now, here's what's wild. It has today, and even this weekend, it picked up some steam because what's happened is each side has figured out how to spin it. So the right is like, where's Buttigieg? Like, why is this like today? Like Biden's in Ukraine. Like we have like there's a like the air is literally toxic in Ohio, and like Biden's in Ukraine. Like what is going on? And then the other side has kind of flipped it because the brake system failed, Trump's administration. So now over the weekend and today, it has picked it up because both sides have figured out, okay, this is how we sell it. Like, this is how we play it off. And all the things that I just talked about don't really have like a party. Like they don't have a side.
Right.
Like they are just like sad facts about this story and what is happening. And nobody in the national media is really discussing.
And you know why it really derailed?
Why is that?
Because Denzel wasn't there to go run across the top.
Unstoppable.
Great movie, by the way.
Do you?
It is so entertaining. I don't think you can watch that movie not being. It is one of those. If you're flipping through it and you stumble across it, just sit down and watch till the end.
It's addicting. I just have some other things here because we were late today, but I did want to talk about it. Asbury Revival. I told you. I think you didn't know about this, and I told you about it. Asbury University. It's a Catholic university. They have done over 10 days of a 24-hour worship. It's referred to as a revival. I've said it here on the air before, and I'll say it one more time. I personally am not religious, but I found the story fascinating. The school has gone as far as changing schedules. It has changed test dates. They had an issue. The community only has about 6,000 members. They said that it almost was over triple that. During the heat of the revival, as people came from all over the East Coast to join in. I said to you, I understand it's a Catholic school. I'm still fascinated. The religion fascinates me because there are things that we will bend and do for religion that in any other aspect of life, we would never. Like when I was in college, and I'm sure you were this way too. Sure, there were things that it was like, haha, or it was a joke. I remember though, like if you showed up late for a test, like they would close the door on you. Like you know what I mean? Like it was like the whole point of college in a lot of ways wasn't so much what you were learning as much as it was like, could you show up on time? Could you turn something in on time?
You struggled with that part.
I'm really bad at it. But here's my thing. I should have just used religious exemptions and I probably would have gotten out of some of it.
Well, we are at a spot where people are afraid. Especially people who are different. The only time you can kind of call people out is if you are the same. Mm-hmm. And if there's like a Catholic professor who is like, I get the revival, I get all that, I'm coming to class, you're coming to class. Mm-hmm. Then you can do it. Mm-hmm. It's like telling jokes about your own ethnicity.
Yeah.
You know, like you can tell jokes about Blossberg. I mean, I tell jokes about Blossberg, but you get it. It's better when it comes from you.
Sure.
I remember when I worked in Baltimore, the one company, the founders were Chinese, and it was, our company was not very big. There was maybe 12 people, but it was the United Colors of Benetton. We had a Vietnamese dude, we had a Korean dude, we had a British dude, we had, like, it was all over. And one of the guys was a black guy, and we were open on Martin Luther King Day. And he's like, I'm not coming.
Yeah.
And I remember the one guy said to him, the CFO, who's a white guy, he's like, well, we're open Monday. And he just looked at him. He said, I'm not coming on Dr. King's birthday. And as the company, they're like, what do you do?
Right.
So he didn't come, and everybody else came to work, because you're afraid to rock the boat with any group that's different than yours. And I get that. I understand, you don't want to be the villain.
Right. Well, for me, what's interesting to me is, like, it's a Catholic school. So I get it. Like, part of the reason they're there is because they have a strong faith and that's what they believe in. It just feels like there's never a line for religion. It just feels like and I think what I've read so far about this revival, it was incredibly peaceful. Like, the community members have said, like, it was disruptive, but it wasn't, it's not like anything was destroyed.
It wasn't like Woodstock.
It wasn't like Woodstock or anything like that. But
why even have it?
But for me, anytime I see something like this, and I see the way people just start bending to it, right? Because not everybody in Asbury could possibly be religious. It's just not every student.
But what's the gain? What's the gain to draw your line in the sand?
Oh, I agree. I agree with that aspect. But again, it comes back to the idea of, like, you're 10 days into it now and it's still going. Like, I'm like, you and I talk a lot. I'm fascinated by the line. Like, where the line falls and how people decide where the line falls is something that always fascinates me. This just happens to be a religious story.
No, I get it. There is, depending on where you're at, like I've told this before, and this probably doesn't have anything to do with anything. When I taught in Baltimore County, they had off for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. They were fascinated that I'd heard of, one of them is the Jewish New Year. I don't know if it's Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, but they were fascinated that I didn't know this. They were fascinated that I didn't know when they were. And they were also fascinated that I didn't get, when I was a kid, we went to school on these days.
Right.
And I said, you don't understand. There aren't really Jewish people where I'm from, which I'm sure there are. I mean, I'm not, but like, we don't. But I would tell them, but we get off the first day of deer season. And they're like, you don't get off for Yom Kippur, but you get off the first day of deer. And I said, when I was a kid, it used to be buck and doe season, and we got them both.
Right.
And so it just depends. Like, there's so much of life of where you are, and what your ethnicity is, what your regionality is, what's important, and it's so.
Yeah. No, it's a fair point. It's a very fair point. I also had here, only because we're kind of running short on time. We brought up Fetterman, and you had brought up the Republicans with the Twitter. Do we want to?
We should hold Fetterman. Fetterman's. We got to talk about
that. Let's save the Republicans on Twitter,
because
that one's good as well too.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to be selfish then, because we only have like 5 more minutes. I wanted to talk to you. The NBA All-Star Game was last night, and there's 2 conversations around the game that are fascinating.
The first one is, why did you watch it? The
first one is, it was awful. Nobody tried. Malone, who was the coach of the Nuggets, actually said his quote was, "It was the worst game I have ever been a part of in my life. The worst basketball game I have ever seen."
Karl Malone?
No, this was Jeff Malone, the coach for the Nuggets after the game.
Jeff Malone's the coach for the Nuggets?
Yes, he is.
I didn't know that.
So that was his quote after, and he said, I believe his exact, "It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be a part of a great weekend, great players. That is the worst basketball game ever played. I don't know if you can fix it. I give Joel Embiid, Kyrie Irving, and some of the guys credit. They were competing. Joel was imploring some of the guys to play harder to try to get some defense in the game. No one got hurt. They put on a show for the fans, but that is a tough game to sit through. I'm not going to lie. The worst basketball game I've ever been a part of."
Did you ever? My favorite All-Star Game story, and I probably told you this before, was when Magic played after he came out and said he had HIV. Now, you were just a little kid when this happened.
I have that game on VHS.
Do you really?
at the end where he's hitting the threes. And
Yeah, when he hit the three at the end.
I have that game on VHS.
Well, can you still play a VHS?
I can't know, but I have it on VHS.
Yeah, you don't even have a DVD player.
I have the old yellow sticker.
Yep.
On the
Amen.
My grandfather filmed.
Well, when it happened, and I was in college at the time, you were 4. But there was this whole because Magic, I think he played a couple games at the beginning of the season, and then they announced it, and then he retired.
Everyone was scared.
But he came out, and so Magic's going to play. And of course, back then, you have to understand the time. It was the early 90s.
Yeah.
And, Magic comes out and he's HIV positive. Well, my God, he's going to die. This is what happens. So when he comes out to play in this basketball game, no one knows what to expect. The first couple minutes of the game were a mess. And it was just it was better basketball than probably last night, but there was not a whole, because the one team in the East, they were like, we don't really know how to cover him. We don't know how to treat him. We don't know. It's almost like he's radioactive, for lack of a better term. And someone told the story. They got switched off, and Dennis Rodman ended up on him. And Magic tried to back him down, and Rodman stood his ground and jacked him. Yeah. And Magic tried to back him down, and Rodman jacked him again. It's like, you're not moving me. Yeah. And they said all at once, everyone's like, Dennis will cover him. Now we can play. Yeah. And then the game picked up, but he ended up being the MVP.
The reason it was awkward is because people were trying. People back then tried in the game, and so there was this weird thing of like last night, Magic Johnson would have fit in the game perfectly
because nobody went near anyone.
Nobody went near anybody anyway. Yeah. And so he could have just.
No, they were playing, and that is fascinating too, because they did play back then. It was still higher scoring, but there was it wasn't a joke.
Dudes were pulling up from half court in the second and third quarter of this game, and the clock still had 5 minutes on it. People were stepping to the half court line and shooting it with 5 minutes to go, in the third quarter.
You did that a lot.
I did.
Yes.
Not that far. Volleyball line, maybe. So
wait. When you say maybe, what do you mean by maybe?
I shot it from a volleyball line. I don't know. So
there's no maybe.
There's no downside to shooting from the volleyball line if you make it.
I agree with that.
So that was the first part of this game, is nobody was trying. That's an important tidbit for the real debate that I wanted to have with you. And I told you this story. There is a player by the name of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So we will call him Shai. He is a young basketball player for Oklahoma City Thunder. None of that matters except for the fact that he made an all-star game. I believe it was his first one, maybe his second. He goes in to dunk. And meanwhile, for all we've watched the whole night is people just walk in and dunk.
It's like the layup line.
No one's playing defense. Everyone's doing this token stuff where you kind of reach, you pretend slap as they go by, stuff like that. LeBron James, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, decides that this is a perfect time for him to turn back the clock, take 2 or 3 steps into the lane, and he blocks Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's dunk at the rim. And Alexander was upset at the end of the game, basically being like, nobody's playing defense. He doesn't play defense the whole game. And then when it's my turn to go in and dunk, he decides that at my expense, he's going to look cool.
How big is Shai?
6'4", 6'5".
Oh, so he's not a big dude.
He's a point guard.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I'm picturing 6'10".
No. He's a point guard, which is an element to this that I hadn't even thought about that aspect to it. Kind of
So he picked on the little guy.
Well, so this is my thing. LeBron James hasn't played basketball. He's played 2 out of a possible 6 games. The Lakers are out of the playoffs. We just went through the whole scoring thing. He broke the record and they shut down the game, and his teammates didn't, Anthony Davis didn't even stand for him. Russell Westbrook didn't even applaud and then was traded the next day. You have all these, he's just a weird guy. He just falls into this. And then in an all-star game where everyone's just kind of ho-hum and everyone has clearly decided we're not trying. And then out of nowhere, he's just you know what? I've been hurt and but I'm gonna rev up here and block this guy's shot. I think if I was the other guy, I'd be like, what are you doing? What is wrong with you? But he was upset after the game, and
that's basically what he said after the game.
Would you be upset?
It is weird. It seems incredibly personal.
The fact that you said the word weird makes me feel better, because that's the word I kept using arguing with my cousin earlier today. I just kept saying to him, I didn't use the word good or bad. I was like, it's weird. Like, it's just that is the thing you decide to do, given the context of what's going on and everything that just happened. And now you're going to like rev up and like block this shot. And clearly they're not like, I'm sure they know each other, but clearly they're not buddy-buddy. Like, this isn't like he's going in and like blocking his teammate from the Lakers,
right?
Or like
it's not Dwayne Wade from
No, he's like this is clearly this isn't, and he just decides like this is the moment. Like, I'm gonna do it. Just a weird guy. Just a really, really weird guy.
Hey, before we go
ahead.
Over the weekend there was other big, and we do have things we want to talk about. Like you said, we're going to talk about Fetterman when we have more time.
Yeah,
we're going to talk about Fox News when we have more time. Do you want me to talk about on Saturday night was the Elimination Chamber, which is the third best pay-per-view behind WrestleMania and the Royal Rumble. Would you like me to break down?
I'll give you 15 seconds, and then whether you're done or not, I'm going to start signing off.
I can't accurately surmise the greatness of the Elimination Chamber in 15 seconds. I just can't do it.
No.
Can't do it.
Okay. Sorry, it's wrestling. Here's the thing, though. I bet you it was more real than the basketball game.
It might have been. It might have been. There was it is one of the and this is one of the neat things about it now that I'm an adult, and you can really see, because I had a guy explain this to me, where like it's all fake. It's not all fake. It's predetermined. It's scripted. But when these guys are flipping off top ropes and the acrobatics that these 250, like, it's incredible the stuff that they can do.
Yeah.
And when you watch like referees, and when something happens and the guy starts playing to the crowd so the camera can move because the referee's coming in to check to see if the guy's okay, and stuff happens and you're like, I think he's hurt. Here's my question to you. It is incredible. It's almost not what a sleight of hand as to, because they do it in front of a live audience.
Yes. Here's my question to you. Is it acting or is it athletics? Because if you don't see, I'm concerned now, because you should have answered that right away. Because here's the problem you have.
It's
hold on. Here's the problem you have. Look at me. Look, I need to know that you're thinking right here. Look at me.
I am thinking. That's
but not what I'm about to say. Okay. Explain to me the difference between what they do and what Tom Cruise does in the Mission Impossible movie. Because it's Tom Cruise on the bike. Like, Tom Cruise is like,
because they only get one take and there's a live studio audience. Athletic. It is. You said what was the other word?
You said it's scripted.
What was the other word you said? Acting or athletics? I don't know if athletic. It's acrobatic. I don't know if that counts as athletic, but it is scripted acting acrobatics. It's like theater, except instead of going to the theater and watching a play, you're watching. It's like sports. And when you go to the theater, the story's scripted and it's fake.
But the only thing that it's like sports is that it's live. That's the only thing.
Well, they pretend
there's nothing else. I understand that, but there's nothing else about it that is sports. The only thing is that it's live and in person. That's the only thing.
But a sitcom is pretending that it's this real family in real life in somewhere, and it's not. It's all pretend. So wrestling is like a sitcom or a drama, or whichever aspect you want to do it, of sports. But when you get past all that stuff, these guys are huge.
But you wouldn't call Friday Night Lights sports, the TV show or the movie.
No, because it's a TV show.
Okay. That's okay, but what I'm saying to you is that is more similar to what wrestling is than wrestling is to live sports. The only thing wrestling has in common with live sports is that it's live. It has way more in common with the movie Friday Night Lights.
Correct. It's pretending to be sports.
That was beautiful. When you heard it here, that's why they call it. Mark Messina says wrestling is pretending to be sports.
Well, I don't think that was groundbreaking. That's why they call it a sports entertainment.
Correct.
But when you get through all that stuff, if you would just sit down and watch a match, what you want, like my son, we talk about this is a stupid storyline, this is a funny storyline, this is a good storyline. Yes. If you would just watch one match and your whole focus is on, do you see how acrobatic, and when they punch each other in the face 20 times and there's no blood, you're like, come on. Yeah. Like I watch a
WWE?
No, the fights. Mixed martial arts, MMA.
Okay.
You watch an MMA fight, the guy punches him once and his whole face is bleeding.
Sure.
In WWE, he punches him 20 times and he's not even marked. So like I get that, but the stuff they do over the ropes and off the ropes and as big as these are not like little guys on, American Ninja Warriors, the guys weigh like 145 pounds. These guys are like 6'5", 280.
But I think,
and it is really impressive, the agility.
I think what you're mixing up though is like,
I'm not mixing
because
any of it.
well,
I have a clear grasp.
Fine, other people. I think what wrestling fans sometimes get misconstrued about, they let the impressiveness of the feat, like they let it get into them, and then they want to like this has to be something manly. And really, like you said, it's scripted. It's a drama. Like it's
I think everyone
closer,
gets it.
It's way closer to theater than it is to
it is
sports.
Theater.
Than it is to
Absolutely.
sports. Okay. Because I've said
and
to
I
you
think
before,
because
I've said to you before, my favorite thing about sports is it is the realest drama you can have. There's nothing more real than sports.
I agree with that.
And the reason I despise wrestling is that it literally takes the number one thing I love about sports and removes it because it's not real. It's literally
But you still don't know at the end who's going to win. I didn't know if Sami Zayn was going to win. I thought he was going to win because they were in Montreal.
So
they were in
just like a show. You don't know who's going to die and who's going to live.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And it was great. Just like, do you really think in House of the Dragons that the dragons fly? Do you really think? See?
I also don't think they're real dragons, but yes, continue.
But did you like the show?
First, I will answer your question. The fact that you didn't say, did I think the dragons were real? You asked me, do you think the dragons really fly? Almost implying that the dragons might be real.
That's fair.
But
there are dragons.
But your question was what?
Did you think the show was good?
Yes.
And they had flying dragons?
Yes, but I've also never tried to tell somebody that House of Dragons is real, or that it's.
I've never tried to tell you wrestling's real,
or that it's something it's not, which is sports.
Did you tell me to watch House of Dragons?
Wrestling fans.
Hold on. Did you tell me to watch House of Dragons?
Yes.
Okay. Why? Because you liked it, even though it was fake and scripted and all made up. So I tell you to watch wrestling because it's great, but it's fake and scripted and all made up.
But wrestling fans will tell me it's a sport and it's not. And no House of Dragons fan walks up to you and goes, "You should watch this documentary about dragons."
Because it's like National Geographic.
That's what I'm saying.
No,
right.
All right. I would debate. I don't think that there are wrestling fans that come up and tell you it's a sport. I do not. I don't think they exist.
I think there's real.
You know what else is fun?
Because
it's a big time of year for high school wrestling because they just started sectionals. They have districts next week or whatever. Tell real wrestling fans that afterwards, if they want their kid to be ready for next week, they should watch the Elimination Chamber. They lose their mind.
Yeah.
Because they don't. Like, if there's any group of people, I think, who hate pro wrestling, it is amateur wrestling.
Well, because it's an art, and it makes people think that there's not an art to it.
I'm with you.
Bogue says, can Rance Mahaffey and I come on again? I want to do a backyard brawl preview later this spring with the Wayne Sport and Loyal Sock coaches, because we could have Jimmy Webb and Rance Mahaffey on, and they could do a little preview of the backyard brawl for us. I think we should do that.
For baseball?
Yeah. No, is the backyard brawl not important to you? You're over it? You're like, whatever?
I don't know. The backyard brawl is it's a great tournament, but like Bowman Field is tough to work with.
Sure.
Especially since Major League Baseball came in and like it's hard. They're tough to work with for the high school teams. It gets rained out. If it spits on the field, it gets rained out, and they won't let it's a challenge. Yeah. It is a challenge.
So you do or don't think we should have them on to preview the backyard brawl?
I just don't want to talk to those two blockheads. No, I don't. No, we can talk about it. That's fine. That's cool.
I don't have anything else.
Jimmy wasn't one of the people there. I just called it. I was trying to insult. There were people that were on. And
you succeeded. There. You still insulted them.
No, that's cool. I did not know how long has Rance been the coach?
I think he's an assistant this past year. I think it was his first year.
Oh, he's the assistant.
As an assistant coach.
Oh, okay. I thought. Okay.
Sorry. Mark's the head coach.
That's why I didn't. That's why you went to saw it. I didn't know he was the head coach. Was my first reaction.
See, this is what happens. Once people become head coaches,
it's how it is. It's just whatever.
All of a sudden, just everyone else can just.
Do you want to talk about Sami Zayn again?
About who?
Sami Zayn and Roman Reigns. The championship match.
Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. I'm Jim Pepper, East Mark Lucino. Be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news.
How about this?
I'm ready.
I will agree. When is the backyard brawl? It's late April?
May.
Is it early May?
Early May.
It's something like that. We can have a backyard brawl. That would be fun. A backyard brawl preview.
Yeah.
As long as we can have a WrestleMania preview.
Okay. I will sacrifice that for you. I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina. Thank you for watching the Midday Show.